Welcome to the deep dive. We're diving into online education today, a topic I know you're really interested in.
Yeah.
You've actually given us a whole stack of excerpts from fundamentals of TEL,
hmm
and we're going to try to pull out some of the most valuable insights for you.
Absolutely.
Our mission today is to cut through the jargon, figure out what all these different learning approaches mean,
Right.
and how they might, be relevant to your own life.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it?
Oh,
Just
absolutely.
how many different approaches and terms there are
Yeah.
shows you how quickly, the field is evolving.
Absolutely. And we see these familiar terms like online learning and distance learning,
Right?
but even those in this context have very specific meanings.
Yeah, it's like we're all speaking the same language, but with different dialects.
Okay.
So, for instance, distance learning is actually like the grandparent of a lot of these concepts.
Okay.
It actually predates the internet as we know it.
Okay.
And it refers to any form of education where the learner and the instructor aren't in the same place.
Got it.
So think correspondence courses, radio broadcasts,
Right.
Even television programs.
Okay, yeah.
All of that falls under this.
Wow. That really puts things in perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive into some of these terms.
Sure.
One that caught my eye was massive open online courses,
Yeah.
MOCs.
hmm
And the source material says that they're usually for free,
Right.
which makes me wonder, what's the catch?
Well, it usually comes from the fact that while a lot of the core content is free,
Mm-hmm.
there can be paid elements like certificates or extra resources.
Okay.
But basically, MOOCs, they rely on a massive scale of participants
Okay.
to make this model work.
Got it.
And they became incredibly popular, especially during things like the COVID-19 lockdowns,
Mhm.
because they basically offered a taste of structured learning to a global audience.
So it's almost like access and exposure.
Yeah.
On a grand scale.
Exactly.
But not necessarily a deep dive.
Not necessarily, no. It's more about breadth than depth.
Okay, got it.
And since they're open, anyone can join, right?
Yep.
Regardless of their background, their location, and that can be really powerful for democratizing education.
Right, right. The source material also mentions this idea of a digital divide,
Yes,
which I think kind of ties into that.
absolutely.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. So the digital divide refers to the gap between those who have access to technology
Mm,
and those who don't, right?
okay.
And it creates a significant barrier to online learning, particularly for individuals in underserved communities or those with limited resources.
Right.
Imagine a hurdle race
Okay.
where some of the runners have a clear path and then other runners have hurdles in their lane.
I see, yeah.
It's not a fair race, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And that's kind of a reminder
Yeah.
that we need to create inclusive learning environments where everybody has the opportunity to succeed.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So it's not just about
Yeah.
okay, you have a computer and internet access.
Right.
It's really about
Exactly. It's much more than that.
equitable access.
It's about equitable access to the resources,
Uh-huh.
the support,
Yeah.
the digital literacy skills.
Yeah. Okay, and the source actually offers some interesting strategies
Yes.
to address this divide.
Mm-hmm.
Things like tech assistance hotlines,
Yes.
device sharing communities.
Right.
These struck me as really
I think so too.
practical, actionable ideas.
They are. They are.
Yeah.
It's really about providing a range of options to cater to different technological capabilities.
Okay.
So think printable worksheets,
Okay.
PDFs,
Yeah.
even good old-fashioned textbooks.
It's funny how we're circling back to
I know, right?
those original methods.
Get back to basics in a way,
Yeah, yeah.
but adapting them to the needs of today's learners.
Right. Well, and speaking of pedagogy, the source material dives into universal design for learning,
Yes.
or UDL.
Mm-hmm.
And this just sounds like a really important concept for creating these inclusive online learning experiences.
Absolutely.
What makes it
Wow.
universal?
UDL is really all about creating learning experiences that are accessible and engaging for the widest possible range of learners.
Okay.
So imagine a classroom
Yeah.
where every student learns differently,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Some are visual learners, some auditory, some kinesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
UDL provides a framework
Okay.
for addressing all these diverse needs.
So how does that actually work?
Yeah,
Can you give me some examples?
absolutely. So UDL is built on three core principles:
Okay.
multiple means of representation, multiple means of engagement, and multiple means of action and expression.
Okay.
So imagine you're teaching a language course.
Okay.
For multiple means of representation, you might present vocabulary using visuals, audio recordings, interactive games. Got it. Multiple means of engagement. You could offer choice in assignment topics, incorporate gamification, create opportunities for collaboration.
Okay.
And for multiple means of action and expression, you might allow students to choose between writing an essay, giving a presentation, creating a video
I see.
to demonstrate their understanding.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly.
It's about offering that tailored fit.
Yeah, it's about providing options
Yeah.
and flexibility,
And I could see how that would be incredibly valuable
especially.
in these online
Yeah.
environments
Absolutely.
where learners are coming from.
Yeah.
So many different backgrounds and have different needs.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that there isn't one right way to learn or to demonstrate knowledge.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
UDL provides a framework for creating these flexible, inclusive learning environments
Mm-hmm.
that empower all learners to succeed.
This is giving me so much to think about already.
I know, right?
But before we move on to even more learning approaches,
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, what stands out to you
Yeah.
from these definitions so far?
I think what really strikes me is this emphasis on learner agency and choice.
Okay.
It's not just about delivering content. It's
Yeah.
about empowering learners to take ownership
Right.
of their own learning journeys.
Uh-huh.
So whether it's choosing how they engage with the material,
Yeah.
how they demonstrate their learning,
Mhm.
or even the pace at which they progress,
Right.
we're seeing this real shift towards learner-centered approaches.
I think that's a really important point.
Yeah.
And it kind of highlights how online learning
Yeah.
can truly personalize.
In ways that traditional classrooms often can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So technology provides us with those tools
Mhm.
to create these more flexible and adaptive learning environments
Okay.
that cater to these individual needs and preferences.
Okay. I'm ready to dive into even more approaches.
Let's do it.
The source material mentions blended learning, hybrid learning, HyFlex learning.
So many options.
It seems like a whole spectrum.
It is.
Let's unpack those in the next segment.
Sounds good.
But before we do, I want to hear from you.
Yeah.
What's resonating with you so far?
Yeah.
What sparked your curiosity?
Absolutely. Welcome back to our deep dive into online education.
We did. We kind of just scratched the surface
We did.
of the vast landscape of terms and approaches
A lot to cover.
in that last segment.
Absolutely.
And now it's time to explore how those ideas translate into, like, real-world learning environments.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm curious to see how educators are putting these concepts into practice.
Well, let's start with blended learning.
Okay.
It's a model that's, becoming more and more popular.
Okay.
It's all about finding that sweet spot between online flexibility and the benefits of in-person interaction.
So it's not just like an either.
Right.
It's really about choosing the right blend
Exactly. It's about finding that right mix
for the specific
for the context.
learning context. Can
Yeah.
you give us an example?
Sure. Imagine like a university history course.
Okay.
Instead of, traditional lectures, students might watch pre-recorded videos
Okay.
and engage in like online discussions outside of class. And then class time is reserved for, more dynamic activities like
Okay.
debates, group projects, bringing in guest speakers.
Yeah.
So it kind of flips the traditional model on its head.
Yeah.
And it frees up that face-to-face time
Yeah.
for more active learning.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
What about like language learning?
Oh, that's a great one.
I imagine blended learning could be really effective there.
Absolutely. Yeah. But blended approach to language learning
Mm-hmm.
might involve using, language learning apps for vocabulary and grammar practice. And then you have your in-person sessions that focus on, real world conversation, cultural immersion.
Right.
So it allows learners to build that strong foundation independently
Right.
and then apply their skills in a more interactive setting.
I love how blended learning really combines
It does.
the best of both worlds.
Yeah, it really does.
Okay, let's move on to hybrid learning,
Okay.
which I think is a specific type of blended learning
It is.
that gained a lot of attention.
Yeah, especially
Well,
during the pandemic.
During the pandemic, yeah.
So what exactly?
So hybrid learning involves teaching in-person and remote students simultaneously.
Oh, okay.
So think of a classroom where some students are physically present
Mm-hmm.
while others are joining via video conference. Hi. That sounds incredibly challenging
It is.
from a logistical and pedagogical standpoint.
It can be. It definitely requires
Yeah.
careful planning and a skilled instructor.
How do you even keep everyone engaged?
Yeah,
Like, how do you make sure that the remote students...
Right, they're not just passive observers.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's the key, right? It's about, using interactive whiteboards,
Right.
breakout rooms for small group discussions,
Yeah.
even just, regularly acknowledging the presence of the online participants.
Yeah.
It's all about fostering that sense of inclusivity,
Regardless of location.
regardless of where they are, exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've seen examples of blended and hybrid learning.
Mm-hmm.
What about HyFlex?
HyFlex learning.
Yeah, that one sounds
It's intriguing.
intriguing, the ultimate flexibility.
Ultimate flexibility, it really is.
What is that?
So HyFlex stands for hybrid flexible.
Okay.
And it takes that concept of choice to a whole other level.
Okay.
So students have the option to attend class in person,
Okay.
join synchronously online,
Mm-hmm.
or even participate fully asynchronously.
Wow, so they can really choose
They can choose
how they want to learn.
based on their own needs, their circumstances, their preferences. Absolutely.
Based on their life.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
But the key is, right, everyone is achieving the same learning objectives,
Okay.
regardless of the path they choose.
So it's really about outcomes.
It is about outcomes, exactly.
And this approach is this gaining popularity.
It is. It's gaining a lot of popularity, particularly in professional development contexts,
Okay?
where adult learners often have to balance, work, family, other obligations.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so it really respects their time
Right.
and gives them more control over their learning experience.
I can see how HyFlex would be incredibly valuable
Yeah.
for adult learners.
For adult learners, absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered blended, hybrid, and HyFlex learning.
We have.
I'm noticing a common thread here.
What's that?
Flexibility,
Yes,
personalization,
absolutely.
and a real move away from that traditional one-size-fits-all
You got
model of education.
It's really exciting to see that shift happening.
It is. Okay.
Yeah.
So that brings us to another important distinction. Synchronous versus asynchronous learning.
Yes,
These are kind of two fundamental modes of delivery
absolutely. Foundational, really.
in online education.
Mm-hmm.
And each, I imagine, has...
They each have their strengths and weaknesses.
Okay, let's break those down.
Yeah.
What is synchronous learning?
So synchronous learning happens in real time.
Okay.
So think of, a live video conference lecture,
Okay.
a virtual classroom discussion,
Mm-hmm.
a collaborative online project where everyone's working together at the same time.
So it's like a virtual version
Exactly.
of a traditional classroom experience.
Yeah, it tries to replicate that.
Yeah, but I imagine scheduling could be a challenge,
Scheduling can be a challenge, especially across time zones.
especially with learners all over the world.
Exactly. And, it requires everyone to have a stable internet connection,
Right.
which isn't always a given.
Right, but that real-time feedback.
Right. But it does allow for that immediacy,
Yeah.
the
And it's
interaction.
that sense of community.
Yeah, that sense of community, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so what about asynchronous learning?
So asynchronous learning that happens on demand,
Okay.
all about flexibility, self-pacing.
Okay.
So think pre-recorded lectures,
Okay.
online discussion forums, assignments that can be completed
Whenever you're ready.
whenever you're ready, exactly.
Yeah.
So it offers a lot of flexibility for those with busy schedules or those who just prefer to learn at their own pace.
Yeah. It sounds very self-directed.
It is. It's very self-directed,
Mm-hmm.
but that also means, right,
Yeah.
that learners need to be more motivated.
Yes, absolutely.
They need to manage their time effectively
Yep.
and be proactive in seeking support when they need it.
So both synchronous and asynchronous have their pros and cons.
They do. They do.
It seems like the key is finding the right balance.
Absolutely. For the
That's- I don't know.
context
That's like
and the
it's like-
learning objectives.
Context.
Yeah. And a
Right.
lot of online courses actually incorporate both. So you might have pre-recorded lectures for content delivery
Mm.
and then live online sessions for discussion and Q&A.
It's really about
It's about,
leveraging the strengths
leveraging the strengths of each approach.
of each approach.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've seen how these different approaches to online learning
Right.
aren't just, these abstract
They're not just theoretical.
concepts.
Yeah, they're being used in really practical and innovative ways
Yeah,
to enhance the learning experience.
absolutely. And it's not just about, the how of delivery,
Right.
but also recognizing
Exactly.
the different contexts in
Yeah.
which learning happens.
Absolutely.
The source material discusses
Yes.
formal, informal, and non-formal learning,
Yes.
which really helps us understand, this broader framework.
It does. It provides a really helpful framework.
Can you elaborate on those distinctions?
Sure.
I think it's easy to assume
It is.
that learning automatically means formal education.
Right. We tend to think of those things as synonymous, but they're not.
Okay, so formal learning is...
So formal learning is that structured, intentional learning
Okay,
that typically happens in institutions.
like schools and colleges?
Like schools, colleges, universities, exactly.
Okay.
Think of it as the traditional model of education.
Yeah.
With set curricula, qualified instructors,
Mm-hmm.
assessments,
Okay,
recognized qualifications.
so it's that kind of learning
Exactly.
that leads to a diploma or a degree.
To a degree or some kind of certification, right?
Okay, got it. What about informal learning?
So informal learning is much more organic
Okay.
and self-directed.
Mm.
It happens outside of those formal settings.
Right.
And it encompasses such a wide range of activities.
Give me some examples.
Reading a book, watching a documentary,
Okay.
having a